in this Ableton session, we've got 183 tracks happening here. So how do you go about wrapping your mind around a Ableton project that has 183 tracks in it? The answer is that you cannot. I'm just telling you right now that there's nobody on this call who has the ability of mentally keeping track of 183 different things happening at the same time. And that's what we have to do when we're mixing. So how do you create meaningful groups? So like our drums here, it's actually a pretty small group, my primary drum bus. So this is going to be the things that I would consider to be like the core beat of the song. So we're just going to go through and listen. So I have my core rack. This is my kick and my snare. I like to have my core rack separated from the rest of my project because I know I'm going to be sidechain compressing a lot of things to my kick and to my snare. So here's my core rack in here. It's really pretty simple. I guess I have a hi-hat in here as well. And underneath, we've got the 808. The other big part of the core beat of this song is this trombone stop. So this is actually a recording of our bass trombone player, Hakeem. It has just tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of distortion on it. So this is like a little sample pack that I made for myself so that I can just throw these trombones on top of anything that I want. So all together, you end up with this, which is really just a pretty simple kind of trap beat, right? To me, what I would say like the important part of this song is all in this group, which I call secondary rhythm. The secondary rhythm group is going to be anything that's just percussion or just offering rhythmic information, but it's not the core group, right? So this is not going to be beats that are all just going boom, 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 cha, boom, 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 cha. This might be like shaker type things or little drum hits. So here, if we just solo that whole group, what's it going to sound like? So we've got like this little conga loop happening. We've got this very kind of washed out acoustic kit, just doing some weird fills, hitting the snare pretty hard. I think we've got other layers like that. Yeah, this little clap layer. And then here we start getting our first hints of harmonic content. So we've got this little greasy bass happening. And altogether, that groove sounds like this. We saw it with our first group. The big important group in all Beauty Slab songs is going to be the brass group. This is really where things went off the rails in this song. The brass group here is just so many layers. It just took us so long to write this song, and the way that we wrote it was not by rewriting the same thing over and over, but just by piling more and more and more on top of it. And so we ended up with way too many brass tracks, but I'm pretty happy with how things ended up. So here, Hakeem is just doubling the 808 that we heard in the primary drum bus, right? So with that, we'll hear Gabe is our tenor trombone player. So here, we had him play this original Spanish lick that we wrote. He is playing with himself, just doubled in unison. Now, it's not the exact same track that I just duplicated, but we had him go ahead and play it twice so that it sounds like there's two Gabes happening. And then we went and we did these growl reinforcements, which might be my favorite part of the song. It's just him playing the end of the lick sloppily and loudly and aggressively as he can. So then, you know, and we got those ba-wahs. So together, Gabe sounds like this. Everything we've been hearing with this brass so far has been without any of the reverb sends on. The reverb sends on this song are doing a lot of work. I'm not going to dive all the way into them, but because this ended up just being such a blossoming, huge project, rather than mixing my band the way I usually do, which, by the way, Beauty Slab has a trumpet player and two trombone players, usually I think of that as, okay, so there are three voices. Together, they become an ensemble, and I'm going to mix them that way. But in this track, there was just so many had different doublings for each individual horn player, that instead I was like, okay, there's the trumpet section. I'm going to mix them as the trumpet section. And that is a voice and also an ensemble. And then there's the tenor trombone section, which is its own voice. And then there's the bass trombone section, which is an insane sentence to say, but there is a bass trombone section because there's so many hakims. All together, they make the brass section, yes, but it really felt more like I was mixing together like an orchestra where it was like groups of groups than usually where I'm like, okay, each member of my band has one voice in this song, and so I'm going to put them together as such. I think maybe the last thing I'm going to show you here is the last group in the song that we haven't talked about, which is this bridge melodic bus. Is say you've got a big brass build-up thing like this. I think it sounds nice, but it doesn't sound like it belongs in a song that could sound like this a couple seconds before. So I like to contextualize it by basically just taking my brass arrangement and doubling it all with elements that I do create on my computer. So that might look like making a group that sounds like this. I could talk for hours about how I went and made all of these parts, but the basic idea is I think the most important thing that the brass was doing is that rhythm. Da 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 da. So I just pulled that and I was like, that motif, that's enough. Like I can just run with that and make a whole bunch of different sounds that'll work with that rhythm. So if there's that one we just heard, we can add a little pluck on top. The other really nice thing you can do is just take the chordal information and strip it of all rhythm. So what are the chords that would go behind da 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 da? Well, they are these chords. And then you can just use counterpoint essentially to expand that into a whole section. So the whole section together. Then we'll tease you at the drop there. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining. I just realized we're actually out of time. So